Okay, so it's Toon Boom tutorial time. In this tutorial, the goal is to make a bouncing ball rig that can squash as well as rotate. So let me create a scene. I'm gonna call it bouncing ball rig. Let me choose where I'm going to save it. All right, and create scene. All right, here we go. We have a default scene with a default drawing. Uh, Alright, so I'm just gonna go right ahead and create the drawing for the bouncing ball on this drawing. Let me just rename this if I can. Right click. Is there anything to rename here? Not seeing it, so maybe in the layer properties. So let me rename it to bouncing ball. Right, okay, so I want to draw from the center here. So you see, actually, I have it selected with the transform tool, so I actually see exactly where the center is. So that might be helpful for me here. Um, yeah, okay, so it's not like the pivot actually increases in size. But yeah, when I change this tool, it's gonna disappear. Let me turn on the grid. On the view, grid, show grid. It's not gonna show up until I draw something, apparently. Um, Otherwise, it's gonna show up in the drawing view. So I can go here, zoom in a little bit, press Alt. Alright, so Alt will, alright, if I just drag like that, it's just gonna create a circle from a corner, alright? But if I hold on Alt, it's gonna create a circle from the center of where I click. So I'm gonna hold on Alt and Shift and try to get it center and just drag it out. So about there. Right. So yeah, I was on the line art. So I'm actually displaying overlay line art, color art. By default, you should at least have line art and color art. That's all we need right now. So I'm gonna select. I can go back to the camera view now. Select line art. I can turn back off the grid now. And I want to make color art. Right, this is the habit we want to get into. Right, keep your lines on your line art layer and your color on your color art layer. So I'm gonna click that button to create color art. Right, so when I go down to the color art layer, you can see it more clearly in the drawing view here. Line art, color art. Right, and if you're not seeing this blue line, press K and then you'll see it. Alright, okay, so we want to color on the color art layer. So I'm on the color art layer now. I want to color this in. Paint unpainted. Just gonna choose a default red and paint that in. Okay, next thing I want to do is create some more lines here. I'm just going to make it look kind of like a basketball. So I'm going to take my polyline tool, go back to the black color. Alright, so make sure I'm on my line art layer. I'm going to do one vertical line like that. Control Shift to end that line and a curved line there and another one going across here. Now why did I go across the edges? Because I can come back with the cutter tool and snip those off. Right, so I'm just dragging through them, snipping those off. Oh yeah, I need one more line to make this more like a basketball. and then snip, snip. Cool. So we have our bouncing basketball. Okay, so in cutout, we don't usually animate drawings, right? We animate pegs, and the reason for that is, back in the day before they had pegs, this is my understanding, right? I didn't use Toon Boom back in the day before they had pegs, but this is from what I've heard other gurus say, um, that you used to have your drawings all in hierarchies, but it's basically how the pivots work for the drawings, right? So let's say for things like hands, right? If you have a bunch of different drawings, right? Basically, this is a drawing layer, right? But every time I make a new drawing, say on a new frame, that is a new drawing substitution, let's say, right? So we'll call it that, a drawing sub. So let's say, for hands or mouths or anything like that, you want different poses, right? Because nobody cuts up a hand into, you know, all the separate digits of the hand. It's just too much work. So use drawing subs for that. So uh, basically, if you're using drawings, every single drawing sub you make would have its own unique pivot that would have to be repositioned every single time. But if you use a peg and you set the pivot of the peg, and you have a drawing attached to that peg, all of the drawing subs will inherit the same pivot point of that peg. So that solves that problem. Hopefully that makes sense, but later on I'll go over it in another tutorial. Okay, so want to make a peg for this bouncing ball. Alright, so yeah, in my node view, alright, this is the best place to make a peg. I can just hover over here and go Control P and makes a peg. Alright, so by default it's called bouncing ball peg. So I can come here with my transform tool. Right, if I click on this, you see it's kind of um, purple. Right, square is purple, and that kind of gives me an indication that I have just the drawing selected. And when I press B, then it turns yellow, and that means I'm selecting the peg. Right. Okay. So if we look here, we see that the peg, right, has all this lovely transformation attributes, right? X, Y, Z, rotate Z, scale X, Y, and skew. So yeah, that's just me clicking that plus sign to reveal all that, and then the drawing has pretty much the same thing, right? So normally when we are doing cutout rigs, especially for characters, we would not actually want all this stuff here, um, because we're not animating the drawing, right? But in this special case for this bouncing ball, because we wanted to also rotate and squash and stretch, we want to have these, right? So basically in the layer properties, now I can right click here and go layer properties, or I can click this yellow box here and that brings up the layer properties. You can see here under controls, animate using animation tools is checked, right? So every time that is checked, we're going to have access to all these attributes. If it's not checked, then we don't. See? Okay, so not much left to do here really, except demonstrate how this is gonna work. I guess it doesn't matter if this auto keyframe is on, I can always reset. But basically what I want to demonstrate here is that I can stretch this ball like that, right? And I can come to the drawing and rotate it. Alright, so doesn't seem to want to do it in real time, but you can see that it's rotating while being stretched, right? And that's the effect that we want, right? And I wouldn't be able to do that with just pegs alone, Alright, so I'm just gonna select this peg and press R to reset it to its default. Um, because let's just say if I did make another peg, right, say a master peg on top of this one, right, and let's say I stretch this one, right, the master peg, and then I tried rotating this one. That's not what I want, right? I want it to rotate while being stretched, right? So I'm just gonna undo that peg, right? So I'm just staying with this peg and not drawing. Okay, so yeah, I think I'm pretty much ready to start animating here. See, I already have a keyframe here because I've had the auto key on, right? So it created a keyframe there automatically. Oh yeah, another thing to note is you see how I position X, Y, and Z separate here. So that's actually better in most situations, right? Especially if you're gonna animate a bouncing ball. However, there is one different option here in the layer properties, right? You see we have well, I guess I might as well save now. You see we have, by default it's separate, and then we have 3D path, right? So let's see what we get with 3D path. And when it's 3D path, you see the X, Y, and Z are all together in one kind of attribute there. Alright, so it's just a different way of animating. Um, but most of the time, if you have the X, Y, and Z separate, it's going to give you more fine control, right? But 3D path does have its own benefits, right? So let's say if I was to start keyframing here with 3D path, so I'm gonna expose the entire thing. Just press F5 to expose the ball to the end. And if I just start setting keyframes here, alright, so should be something where I can switch on the visibility of the 3D path. Just a second. Okay, so I think it's Shift F11. No, view show control. Okay, well, the shortcut didn't seem to work. Maybe I need to have my mouse um, over the display for it to work. Shift F11, Shift F11. Yeah, okay, so if you do it down here, it does nothing. No, way. Okay, I don't know why the shortcut wasn't working there, but you can see the path, right? Um, and there's a way you can edit these paths. Actually, no, you can add points to these paths. Just a second. Sorry, it's been a while, so I just had to Google that, but I don't really use motion paths that much. But yeah, if I hover over the line here and press P, sorry, I have to have the window active. I don't know why the window wasn't active. Press P, right? It adds another point there. So I can actually change, right, the shape of this path over time. So it's not actually adding a keyframe there, but I'm changing the the shape of the path, right? Not necessarily the spacing, but kinda, yeah. Alright, I can add another point. So I can add as many points as I want, really, between these paths here and change the shape of the path. Alright, so that's kind of useful if you're animating something like, you know, a flying object, right? That's just buzzing around the place. To get your arcs, right? You can do 3D path and alright, move these points. I can even move the position of the keyframe as well. So this is where I'm going to change my spacing somewhat, right? Because obviously the closer I move this keyframe to the next keyframe, right, is the closer together those in-betweens are going to be, and the further apart these are going to be. So yeah, that's kind of a useful kind of visual there, right, that you don't get with the separate. So let me turn it back to separate and see what happens now. I see I no longer have, right, access to that motion path here. It's still showing me these keyframes, but there's no change in position, right? It's kind of deleted. Yeah, all of these position keyframes are gone, right? So let me just delete these keys. Just gonna select all of them and go F7 and delete those keys there. Okay, so yeah, I'll probably break this up into another video and do a bouncing ball in the next video.